Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to take 1 minute to let everybody get signed in, and we're so happy to see you here today. I hope everybody's feeling okay. I know there's a lot of stuff going around, or at least that you have a cup of tea with you. Got a standing room only crowd today, which is terrific.
Yeah, there's so many people that you're not all fitting on my one screen. I have to toggle.
That's terrific. All right, well, we're going to get started, and as people join, we'll catch them up. My name is Ann Cuppinger. I'm with the Community Technical Assistance Center of New York, and we are here today in the sixth webinar in a series that we're doing on supervision practices and the supervision of youth peer advocates. The topic for today is managing up, assuring you have what you need to be the best YPA supervisor possible. So we know that this is a popular topic, and we're really looking forward to everybody participating today. It's a big group, so most of that participation will happen in the chat, but there may be opportunities for you to unmute yourself and share your feedback and your comments and your questions and ideas. So the most important thing is for you to figure out, to listen and join into the conversation. That's what makes it really rich for everyone. So if right now you could just chat in your name, the agency that you work for, and where you are in the great state of New York. And if you're from outside of New York, we're happy to see you too. Just to reassure everyone, the slides and resources for today will be posted along with a recording of the webinar within a couple of days. You'll get an email as an attendee that lets you know when those have been posted. And they can be found also on our CTAC website. If you go to our upcoming events calendar and navigate to today's date, you'll find a link to those resources. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we've made it easy for you to access the past webinars in this series. Really encourage you to do that. We started with a webinar, a panel webinar that was hosted by Robbie Lettieri from Families Together in New York State. He's the director of training and youth peer advocate training and credentialing. And it really was a great webinar looking at the role of youth peer advocates. And then we've worked our way through a number of topics related to supervision. So the links to all of these webinars are here for you. And when you get the slides, those links will actually work. The links will work and you can get to those recordings. So again, be active in the chat, and when it makes sense, also, out loud. And we're going to have some breakout groups later on too. So that's that. And so what I want to do now is have our panelists and presenters introduce themselves. This is just a brain trust of wisdom and experience working with young people and supervising youth peer advocates and being youth peer advocates. So I'm going to start with Edie and have everyone introduce themselves.
Hi, it's really so nice to see you all. We have a huge crowd today. So my name is Edie Schwartz, and I have been in the field of behavioral health for a lot of years and working in the public mental health system. And currently I'm a consultant, and I provide training, technical assistance, and coaching.
Tiara.
Good morning, everyone. This is Tiara Springer Love, pronoun she, her. I will apologize in advance throughout the event. My voice might crackle a little bit, so I'm a little bit under the weather. But I am the director of Youth Power here at Families Together in New York State. And I'm going to pass it on over to Robbie.
Thanks, Tara. Hey, everybody. My name is Robbie Lettieri, pronouns he and him. I am the Director of Youth Training here at Families Together in New York State. I'm going to pass it over to Nivea.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nivea Jackson. I'm the Youth Peer Advocacy Coordinator at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Welcome.
Thank you all. Go ahead, Robbie.
Okay. So as Anne referenced earlier, today we're going to be talking about managing up. And so to kick off the topic of managing up, it's really important that when looking at either we being supervisors managing up to people who are overseeing us, executive teams or executive leadership, or if we are talking about the topic of managing up to our supervisees, the YPAs that we oversee, it is really crucial that we keep ourselves in check. So both in terms of our work and in terms of how we are presenting ourselves professionally. So confidence and humility is key. We need to anticipate what our deliverables are and what we are required to do within our roles. And we also need to make sure that we are presenting ourselves in a way that is confident, humble, and also where we are sure that we are doing everything that we are supposed to do. After we make sure that all those check marks are, marked off, then we can look at room for collaboration, for changing things, for growing what we are currently doing, or for, offering new opportunities. But essentially, we really need to look at this as a very collaborative process.
Okay, so we're going to start with asking you to speak a little bit. So what are the issues where you wish your supervisor or management above your supervisor better understood what you do and what the youth peer advocates do? So, what are some of the issues? And just chat in, as best you can, some of the responses. What do you wish you had to help you do your job better? How could people have a better understanding of youth peer support and your work with youth peer advocates? I know for me, while you guys are typing, when my boss doesn't understand what I do or what the folks I supervise do, it's very frustrating for me, because you can't like chew on the important issues and get some help with the things you need if those above you don't understand what goes on. And a lot of times you don't feel really appreciated if folks don't understand what you do. But what do you guys think? Yeah, make sure you chat to everyone. Thanks, Anne.
Sorry, Marissa chatting in that her supervisor is a peer too, and also works as a peer advocate part of the time. So she does understand what we do. Oh, everybody cheers for Marissa.
Right, and another chat, if everyone is not on the same page, there's miscommunication with people involved, and I totally agree. Totally. What else? It's a lot to type, so
I want to add, I'll answer. So this is Tiara, when I was a youth peer advocate coordinator, one of the things that was extremely challenging was getting people to understand some of the unique needs of a youth peer advocate. So for instance, if I needed to accommodate someone who we typically work the 9 to 5 schedule, but they needed to work in 11 to 7 due to whatever challenges that they had in their recovery process, sometimes that would be an issue, right? Like that's just like a minor example of something that I experienced. Yeah. And then sometimes it would just turn into me advocating for something that I felt as a supervisor was not my best use of time or advocacy skills. There's so many things going on with service delivery and supervisors not understanding the unique needs of youth advocates. And also another example of issues that I wish at the time that my supervisors understood were things like how to center lived experience around like policy change, because some people don't understand how youth advocates fit in policy change. They think we're just here to do the one-on-one piece of the work with young people, but there's other roles and responsibilities and opportunities for youth peers. So those were some of the things that I experienced historically.
Totally agree. So we have a few answers now as well. Let's see what you guys are saying. It was such a great point from Tiara. I'd like to see a more empathetic approach, not just rules or what is required, a conversation with how are you. So absolutely. Oops, come on. My computer's not helping. Okay. Helping find answers to problems, find a problem to the solution. I don't quite get that, but maybe that person can just retype that one. DZAM. If you could just retype that, I think there might be a.
And well, I don't think it. Hi, this is Ia. I don't think it needs retyping, because sometimes some supervisors, whatever solution you can come up with, they always find a problem with that.
I see what you mean.
Always find a problem, and then you just don't even want to suggest any solutions.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
Always will be confronted with some, what if this, what if this? Okay, so then.
Right. Sorry about that. I couldn't get it from the one sentence, but you're 100% right. You're looking for, what we need is a little support from our folks, from our own management.
Yeah, because then it discourages you to seek for any kind of solution or to think it.
Of course, or to bring it up. You certainly don't bring it up if you're always knocked down.
Right.
Okay, so my supervisor's not a peer. They don't understand what I do, and that's a huge struggle. I've asked questions and gotten different answers from different higher ups. Absolutely. Sometimes I feel that when you are upper management, you're looked at as not needing support, and you have to suck it up and deal with an issue within the guidelines or scope. That is true, and that is not useful, no matter how. Listen, that's how I make a living now. I coach CEOs. Doesn't matter how high up you get, you always need somebody to bounce things off of. But quite often, as we become supervisors, our supervisors think they don't need to give us a hand. Some understanding of disabilities and requests for accommodations would be helpful. Bringing a solution, not just a problem. It'd be great to have interns to assist with the documentation. So sometimes the need of the population and the deliverables from a management perspective is contradictory, which becomes difficult. But as a supervisor, you exist in this gray area. Absolutely. These are all terrific answers. They're all the problems we see between direct service and management, and we as supervisors are smashed right in the middle. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Thank you so much for diving in. I know there's some more, but I think we'll move on for now, and there's always time to chat and talk about things as we keep going. So okay.
All right. So I also just want to say really quick that being a supervisor to a YPA requires us to be advocates ourselves, both for the work that the YPAs are doing, for the YPAs individually, and also for us in our roles as supervisors. So we need to know what it is exactly that YPAs are doing and what they need. And then we need to look at what is practical for them and what is practical for us as supervisors. Then we can go and utilize the relationships that we have with our supervisors or with our executive team to advocate for necessary changes, or just to get some general feedback. And then also, I think that we have to really acknowledge what it is that we are looking for. Are we looking for guidance? Are we looking for someone to bounce ideas off of? Or are we looking for concrete change? And then whichever one that is how we are going to handle our approach. So whether that is advocating directly to leadership, advocating specifically for your youth or YPAs, or that if that is advocating and educating community partners, so that all of us can have a general understanding of what is needed. But looking at managing up, it's kind of, I don't want to say manipulative, but it's kind of manipulative, right? Because it's always, it's really looking at, cause and effect, or anticipating needs and reactions from those around us. And so it requires us to observe our supervisor, to observe those people who are above us, to observe their personality, and to anticipate their responses. And then it also requires us to look at ourselves and our roles, as well as those who we are supervising or overseeing. And so it's about being that middle person that is kind of working in and out, like kind of slithering a little bit. And I don't want this to sound like it's a negative thing or this is a bad topic, because it's essential. We always need to learn how to communicate effectively and how to handle difficult situations from time to time. But the best thing to do is go at it with respect and having a positive relationship with at least one person above you, so that you have someone who is on your side. Utilizing that relationship with your supervisor or any other, administrative or executive staff is really, really crucial to being able to advocate for yourself and for your supervisees. So once you have a solid relationship, Tiara, I saw you unmuted. I'll gonna call on you in just a second. So once we have like a solid relationship with those above us, then we can really look at how is it that we want to move forward? How is it that we want to, pitch this hypothetical situation or pitch this change that we are hoping to achieve? And then hopefully we will be able to ensure that we are able to create that change by outlining what is needed. And so if we are looking at advocating to our executive team, maybe that means that we as supervisors in our roles need to come up with that answer before we even go to them for advice. Because odds are, if we have a plan already executed and we have a good idea of what it is that we want to see or that we want to change, and we can say, okay, so this is where we're at right now. So we need to take steps A, B, and C in order to create D, E, and F. And then they'll be like, oh, well, I never thought of it that way. Or they'll just be like, okay, or they'll kind of say no. But odds are, if we have a plan and we have a good understanding, the potential for a positive outcome increases drastically. Tiara, go ahead.
I just wanted to share and highlight one of the biggest pieces about managing up is making sure you get what you need to be successful, right? And thinking about managing up in a way where we create the space where youth peer advocates also feel comfortable managing up to us, right? So a lot of times in work culture, it's about, and realistically and with transparency, there's a lot of ageism and adultism that goes on in the work that we do. And earlier, Robbie said it, like we have to be able to check ourselves. So if you have a tendency to look at power in the sense of I'm older, I've been in this work longer, you need to listen to me. That's something that I will challenge you to assess about yourself, because managing up will not be successful if that's how you view power, and also if that's how power is distributed within your agency. I like to think managing up as, how can I make my supervisor's job easier? And then also, how can the youth peer advocate make my job a little bit easier, even if it is a part of just them doing their job, but also taking on additional tasks where they feel as though they are a part of something larger, and that they are comfortable enough to even just come to you and ask questions, just so that they're doing things efficiently and effectively. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to add. Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, really good ones as well. So before we get into some concrete stuff about what this really means, let's talk a little bit about why you should even care about this, why it's important. In our work and in all work, it's really relationships that are most important. There's all kinds of knowledge that one needs to have, but it really is about how we engage with other people, how you engage with your supervisor and upper management, and how YPAs engage with you. Because, it was brought up already, if people don't feel, I think it was in the chat, if people don't feel comfortable they're with you, they're not going to bring hard issues to you. If you don't feel comfortable with management, you're not going to bring hard issues to them. If everything that you bring to them is perceived as a problem, you're going to feel very alone, because you're not going to want to bring those issues up above. Same for YPAs. If they see that they don't have a good relationship with you, they're not going to be open and honest. And that's where Robbie's opening statements, I mean, they're important everywhere, but that's where they really hit home. This is where, you know, our humility, being humble, being transparent, being open, being human, becomes so important, because relationships really matter. And then the other thing that's important is that, let's be honest, when you do a good job, people notice. When you don't do a good job, people notice as well. And but when you do a good job, it's not just good for you, it's good for everybody. It's good for your team. You know, how many of you have gotten your new jobs places or promotions places because people knew you through work and knew that you did a good job and said, oh boy, she or he or they would be great for this job. And so so managing up, you know, helps you there as well. And it also helps your supervisor, because when the team does a good job, then the supervisor looks good as well, and that doesn't hurt you. That comes back to you. So all in all, by doing this, it makes your day-to-day life easier. And I want to say this right up front, because we're going to talk a lot today about, you know, Robbie made me laugh about slithering and, throughout things, but we're going to talk a lot from that sort of management perspective. But the bottom line is this. This is how I have been a manager my entire career. Look at the brass ring. I know what the brass ring is. And the brass ring is not actually on this page. It's not the promotion, making my supervisor well. The brass ring is somewhere down the line, no matter how high up you go, there is a human being who is asking for some assistance as they move towards their own recovery, and they walk the journey that they need to work to have a successful and satisfying life. And when you do what you're supposed to do and help your supervisor to give you all the tools you need, that person will have an easier time getting what they need out of your service system. And I think that those are the kinds of things to remember when we do these. Do you need to have an ethical base that you won't go below? Absolutely. Because there's a lot of things you're going to be asked to do, and we all have ethics in this world, and there are certain things we'll do and certain things we won't. And you develop those if you haven't already. But the bottom line is, by doing this, your job, and helping your supervisees to do their job beautifully, and helping your supervisor to help you do the best you can, that the folks who are the youth and adults who are looking for a little assistance or some guidance on their own recovery journey will get it better. So that to me is what the brass ring is, and that I consider. Let's get back to managing up. One of the important things here is, I think Tiara mentioned it, it's about power differential. It's about emotions. Try to keep your interactions about the work. Try to remember that the people who you supervise and the people who supervise you are human. They all have personalities. Nobody has to be your best friend. You have to have a collegial relationship, and try to always make it about the work and not really about the personality or the style. Not easy, by the way, I'm aware of that. So let's get into some concrete tips, because we were talking in the pre-meeting, and those of you who've been on any of our other webinars know that our group likes to give you some concrete information about how to take what we're saying and go out there and do something about it. So here's sort of step 1, 2, 3, 4 on managing up. Number 1, and a lot of these were said already, make sure you know who your supervisor is. Make sure you know what's being asked of them. You know, if I asked you now, rhetorically, I'm not asking you to answer, do you really know your supervisor's full scope of work? You should, because you should understand what your supervisor oversees, and you can ask. The other is use your powers of observation. You know, observe your supervisor and figure out their style. How do they like to function? You know, one of my best friends was my supervisor for a while, and he and I both have a similar personality. We work each other into a frenzy. We're very sort of the drama queen and king, and we know that, and we laughed about it. But we knew that was our style, and our priorities were exactly the same. And we would try to be careful when we saw that we were working each other up, you know? So figure out what your supervisor's style is. Are they one that likes to share a lot? Are they one that doesn't like to share a lot? And just observe it and be aware of it. Try to assess yourself. What's it really like to work with you? And again, I'm not asking for answers. I have to say that I have done this exercise, and sometimes it's not pretty and it's a little embarrassing, but I am who I am, and I try to fix the things that I can amend, and I try to live with the things that maybe are a little challenging that I can't change. But what's it like to work with you? Identify your own strengths, challenges, and priorities. And by the way, this is a great exercise for the people you supervise as well, to look a little bit into what their strengths and challenges are at work and what the priorities are. And last but not least, think about how you act. You know, you really can't control what other people do and what other people say. You can't. I mean, as a supervisor, you think that you can control other people, but you can't. What you can control is how you react and interact to other people. And I think that those kind of very basic tips are the way to get started.
I have a question, Edie.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could go back to the last slide where we're talking about knowing your supervisor. What if the people in the audience, and I know some people in the audience because they've been to the series, and some people we just know from our network, I've heard this complaint before where some youth advocates, they don't have the opportunity to know their supervisor. Either it's they don't work in the same setting as their supervisor, or their supervisors have not made time for them with like a supervision, right? Like they don't meet with them regularly, and their supervisor is just not interested in getting to know them on that level. What tips would you give for those who don't have the environment where they can openly manage up?
Those are really, really great questions, Tiara, and they're real. But I think that that the first tip I would give is to ask and try and be transparent. So let's say the person is on another site and you actually can't observe them and you really don't know their style. You could ask them. You could say things like, which I know that you're out a lot, or you leave, you travel around the state a lot, or we don't get to meet because you're really busy. How do you like to communicate? What's the best way for me to communicate with you? Is it text? Is it phone? Is it email? So you begin by asking that kind of question. Let's say they don't meet with you. Then you could say, I know how busy you are, but it would really help me if we had a kind of way to touch base more often. Is there a way that would work for you? Maybe 5 minutes in the morning, or maybe 15 minutes on a Friday afternoon. You could give a few suggestions of each of the areas, but ask them. And you won't get, hopefully, whapped for asking the question, where you might be if you say, you never meet with me. I'm out there by myself dangling. I can't stand it, But in that way, you say, I understand where you are, or you could say something like, I really, it would really help me to understand the scope of your work so I could see where my piece fits into the larger agency. You know, you keep it about you and the work and not about the supervisor. And you know, I said, I know it's hard. Some people are going to shut you down and not want to. You just have to do the best you can to keep plugging, but those are really great questions. So let's get into a few, and we're going to go over actually some of the things that Tiara just asked, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more. So how do you even begin? What should you do tomorrow or this afternoon? You know, again, figure out what your supervisor and your supervisees both need. So you want to be interested in what your supervisor's doing, as well as what the YPAs that you supervise do. You want to know their goals. You want to celebrate their achievements, up and both your supervisors and supervisees. You want to mirror what you do in your supervision with how you want to be supervised. If you demonstrate how you want to be supervised, because, and again, be transparent. Say to this, if the supervisor is saying, why are you bothering me with that stuff? You could say, because that would make me a much better supervisor, and that would help my supervisees get the work done. Again, make it easy for your supervisor to connect with you. Figure out what way works for them. I think I mentioned this once. You know, one of my bosses just had got 900 emails a day. So when I sent him something, he used to say to me, please text me, tell me to read the email that you sent at 10:30 on Tuesday. And that's what I did. I said, you know, I sent you an email, read it now. And he would read it. So, you know, figure out how they like it. Some people hate emails. Some people hate texts. Figure out the best way and make it easy for your supervisor and your supervisee to reach you. So what's your best method? Everything I'm saying here for your supervisor also pertains to your supervisee and you. Okay, here's another thing. Schedule and keep regular meetings with your supervisor. And we have spoken about that in supervision for the YPAs. You know, what does it feel like when you get canceled? For me, it feels like I'm just not important enough. They've chosen another meeting over the meeting with me. My work isn't as important as that work. Now, I know sometimes things get canceled. We all know that. But try your best to schedule these meetings. And let's say you have that supervisor, like we were talking about before that Tiara brought up, that just doesn't meet with you and is off-site. Then you could be the one to come forward and say, I know you're not on site with me, and I know that that you're all over the place and whatever, but I wonder if we could put something on the books on a regular basis, just for a half hour maybe, and then if we have to cancel, we can cancel. You may get a no, but you know, at least it shows that you're being proactive. So you know, make sure that your relationships are good, because remember, it's relationships that matter. Come to supervision with goals and talking points. You don't just come to supervision with your supervisor with a blank slate. If they don't ask you for an agenda, bring the agenda with you. Some people who I coach send me, some come with things in their head. One woman sends me something ahead of time. Sometimes it's just the morning that we're going to meet, but she says, these are the issues I'd like to talk about today. So, you know, be prepared, come with talking points. Make sure that you share who you are and what you believe in and what your goals are and ideas for improvement. Maybe they're going to get shot down. Maybe you have a supervisor who doesn't really, you know, support innovation, but at least you tried and you put them out there, and you never know when the idea that you put out is going to be taken. So don't give up. Keep bringing them forward. That shows you're proactive, you're consistent, and you're committed. And make sure that your supervisor knows what's going on, the good things as well as the challenging things. Sometimes we only bring challenging issues to the forefront. but bring your achievements. You know, before we get started on all these problems we have to deal with, let me just tell you, we had the most wonderful review by the Office of Mental Health the other day. And they gave us, you know, they said that this thing that we do, these groups were just wonderful. And I'm so proud of everybody. So bring those achievements forward as well. Be aware of everyone's needs, your own needs, the needs of your supervisors, and the needs of your supervisees. How do you do that? You want to make sure that you evaluate your supervisor's goals. You want to understand your supervisor's goals, and you want to support good quality work. And that will help you and the team get noticed. Don't be a thorn in your supervisor's side. I mean, I shouldn't even have to say that, but it's here. You know, we want to make our supervisor's life a little bit better. That's been said before. Don't you want the YPAs who you supervise to make your work life a little bit calmer too? And you want to know that you're taking care of business. Not that you don't have issues and challenges, not that you don't need assistance. I mean, that's foolish. We all need assistance. But, you know, one of my favorite lines, and I meant it, was, I've no idea how to take care of that, but please don't worry, because we're going to figure it out. And, you know, do you say that when you're faced with something? I'm not saying, say, I know what to do, I'm going to take care of it. But are you able to say, I don't know what to do about that, but I am really going to figure it out, and we're going to figure it out together. And, you know, figure out what the goals are. Agencies have goals, quality assurance programs. You may not have them somewhere on your division, but they're there. Believe me, strategic planning, quality assurance, find out what they are, and make sure that your team, that you and your team are the ones who are meeting and exceeding your performance goals. First of all, if you're doing that, more people are getting what they need from your services, and the YPAs will be happier. Staff retention will go up. They'll be more happy, contented with their job, and you'll feel better about your job. You'll know that you're helping people to grow both in their work and in their personal life, and that and your supervisor will be pleased with that, and your entire division will look better. So let's take a minute to just look at all the different kinds of supervisors. So we will have no hand raising for this one, but I want you to pick out which supervisor you have, and you don't have to have only one. You know, you could have any number of these in a supervisor. So is your supervisor brand new? Are they indecisive, or are they all-knowing? Are they someone who gives you conflicting messages, or maybe it's somebody you never see because they work in another location, or they don't care that much about this particular work? Are they a hands-off supervisor? They care, but they believe you're in charge. It was in the chat box. Somebody talked about that. You know, they expect you to take care of your business. They're hands-off. And are they somebody who rose up and they actually know less about the organization and services than you do? And sometimes we have people in charge of us who know less about things than we do. And I don't mean just about youth peer advocacy. I just mean less about the work than we do. So all of these particular kinds of supervisors have particular challenges that require unique skills to handle. So think about what kind of supervisor you have.
All right, so again, going back to the style of managing up and looking at what our supervisor might be like, we want to anticipate what our supervisor needs and understand how they react to certain things or situations. We then want to prepare ourselves to present the issues in a constructive manner that our supervisors can understand, that is advocating for our needs and for the needs of our YPAs that we are overseeing. Respect, dignity, and humility is essential at all times in being a professional, and especially when we're looking or discussing managing up. So if we disagree, just remember to stay calm and remember that we aren't doing this to be personal or to defend ourselves per se, but rather to ensure that we are creating a positive program, that we are creating positive services, that we have a goal and that we are going after how we want to achieve that goal. I feel like a lot of times in this work, we allow our emotions and our ego to get in the way. And if we can remove that, the answer or the finish line becomes much clearer. So that's just something to consider. Hopefully we never lose our supervisor's trust, but if we do, how can we get it back? How can we present ourselves to remind them of the employee that we are and to remind them what it is that we are essentially trying to do? What are we advocating for? As Edie and Tiara both stated, how are we presenting ourselves to support that supervisor, to support the people above us? How are we going to make our organization better by advocating for what we are and by, quote, managing up? It really comes back to, professionalism and respect, confidence and humility. That is what all things regarding managing up is rooted in. Try not to get overly confident and really do not get combative, because that is the last thing that we want. And especially because we are embodying this for the YPAs that we oversee, and we are, stepping into something that they might want to do and that we want to encourage them to do with us as supervisors. So how are we doing this in a way that they're like, oh, okay, I can do that too? Are we combative? And is that in return going to make our YPAs combative towards us? Are we combative, and is that going to make our leadership or executive team look at us in a negative way? Or are we looking at this from a collaborative perspective, where we are founding all of our wants, needs, and desires on respect with a clear and concise goal in mind?
I think Robbie's last statement is, it really sums up, that just really, I'm trying to think how to say this. That really sums up what we're talking about. We want to give tips and ways to do it and the little details that come, but keep in mind that overriding point that he just made, because it's incredibly important. Come to your job humble, ready to share power, understanding that everyone has challenges, being respectful, setting up relationship based on respect. And I think that that in those ways, that's how we get to manage up, by being that kind of person. So I'm going to ask you to type in some things, and I do see a comment in there, but it was a little too long for me to read, so I'm going to read it while you guys are typing in. There's a question about this whole presentation, and some of you may agree and some of you may not. But should we adapt our behavior at work for people who may be different from us? And if we have one of those supervisors who are doing something that who function in a way that we don't, or one of those types like Anne wrote that are hands off till they're not, should we actually adapt our behavior at work? What do you think? Some people say, no, I am who I am. Other people, like us, we're saying you might want to think of doing a few things differently to get to where you need to go, get that brass ring. What do you think? Should I adapt my behavior at work for a supervisor who may be different from me? Should I adapt my behavior at work for a supervisee who may be different from me? To some extent only, yes, but I think that it has to be mutual. Yep, we should adapt for others' needs, not change who we are. Very good point. And you can do that. You have to have some flexibility, keeping in mind individuality. I will adapt to others' needs. Adapt to some degree, especially if bouncing all over the place. I can't read it as it bounces. Where did that comment go? Especially if the person has authority over you, but not to go against your ethics. We benefit more from being flexible in accommodations. That's true. I adapt depending on who I am speaking with. We should adapt to different people's needs, but stay true to self. Yes. And you know what? That is harder than it looks. And that really is the crux of this. Some people, Crystal adapts in small ways to help YPAs feel comfortable and safe. And that's important, but you don't want to change who you are. We can be ourselves. Yep. Yeah, these are great. Take a look at all this feedback. A lot of people are saying, yes, it's important to have common ground. It's important to adapt, but it's important to have ethics, and it's important to be themselves. And I think that that is really the important piece here, is that we can adapt our behavior without changing ourselves. And when we're talking about managing up, we are not talking about doing something behind someone's back or in a non-transparent or a non-honest way. We're talking about changing some behaviors and approaches, not changing who we are. So here's some possible ways to adapt your behavior and still be you. Identify what frustrates your supervisor and avoid doing it. And, you know, like my issue, you know, with my friend Harvey is that where we both can be worked up. Sometimes I didn't avoid it, but I could notice when it was coming, and so could he. And then we could stop it and laugh about it. So identify is what's really important here. If you can't avoid it, at least identify it so you can stop it in the middle. Ask questions. Make sure that you understand everything. Don't just take it for granted that you know where your supervisor wants you to go. And don't take it for granted that the YPA you supervise 100% understands what you want of them either. Do you have any questions? Let's say you're supervising. This is how we're going to go about this. Do you have any questions about that? Do you think that that approach with that youth is something you can do? Where would you feel uncomfortable in addressing that? All right, with your supervisor. All right, I understand you want me to increase each hour in the field. Do you understand that most of our people live in Brooklyn and our office is in the Bronx and the trains are really slow this time of the year? Let me know what the bottom line is. So ask questions. Make sure your supervisor knows what's going on. I'm trying desperately about what you want, but here's the issues I'm having. Or, you know what, your productivity standard is great, but I'm telling you now, we're surpassing it ×6. So I think we could actually up it. So keep your supervisor in the loop, be proactive. Don't wait for them to sit back and tell you what to do if you know the direction to go. Remember that you are actually the expert as well. You know, when you power share, there's 2 experts in the room. There's not 1 expert in the room. There's 2 experts in the room. And your supervisor probably is not into the nitty-gritty like you are. So you really know what's happening. So be proactive. And don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. Go to your supervisor and say, you know what? We're moving in this direction. I think this would be great to do next. What do you think? Here's one. I bet it annoys everybody as much as it annoys me. You know, everybody makes mistakes. Who doesn't make a mistake in this room? Just own it. Just say, you know what? That's my bad. Don't try to cover it up or don't try to off it on somebody else. Just say, you know what, I really screwed that up and I'm going to fix it and I'm going to try really hard not to do it again. So own up to your own mistakes. You know, mistakes are part of human nature. They're what makes us human, loving, honest, transparent things. We don't want to be worried about making errors, and we don't want the YPAs we supervise to be worried about making errors. If you slap down someone who makes an error, they're never going to come to you with that error again. And then how are they going to learn? You know, what I remember, there was a chat in about going to your supervisor with mistakes and getting, you know, smacked for it. Then, you know, what does that say? It says, well, I'll never tell you again when I make a mistake. So try to own your mistakes. Try not to cover them up. Try to learn from them and try to help take the, you know, that burden off of somebody making an error. When you have issues and challenges, you know, I don't like that. Don't come to me with a solution, with a problem if you don't have a solution, because why would I come to you with a problem if I already solved it? You know, I'm coming to you because I need some help solving it, but don't dump it on your supervisor's lap. Here's my problem. Offer some possible solutions. Say, here's my challenge, and I thought of dealing with it this way and this way, but I'm not so sure either one of those are the best way to do it. What do you think? It's much more of a give and take, and then try to make requests, not complaints. So, you know, we don't ever get anything here. We can't even find a paper clip. You know, we have no furniture, nothing works here. Instead of that, why don't you say, you know, if there's any money at the end of the year, we really could use some new furniture and a bunch of office equipment and office supplies. We're a little short on everything. Try to make a request, not just complain about what you have. And what if you try everything that you can try and your supervisor is still challenging or frustrating? That is hard, and I put it here as you can't change, you know, their behavior. You can only change your own. So try your best to use your best human skills, your best advocacy skills, and look for the good in the other person. Try to make sure you're really clear about what they need. Try to have some patience. Think of what works for you when you begin to lose your patience. Do the best you can, you know, to keep on an even keel. Consider that person is not a mean, nasty person, that supervisor, that they are not out to get you. They are who they are, and you want to be the best person you can be with that person. These are not easy things to do, but sometimes when you change the story a little bit, it helps you to see things in a different light. Because again, I'm going to say it again. You can't change them. You can only change you.
Edie, I do want to add to to that. The other part the other part is if your supervisor is challenging or frustrating and you've done everything you can do, don't take it personal, right? And I just want to keep echoing that. And I think that not taking things personal is super duper helpful when it comes to us beating ourselves up, right? Like, well, what can I do? Or I can't do this, or this person is frustrating, right? It helps us practice emotional resilience, right?
Yeah.
For ourselves, right? If we take time to look clearly at things, it's going to help us gain some distance maybe from a particular situation and help us refocus our energy on the work, because the work still needs to move whether we have a great relationship with our supervisor or not. So I just wanted to echo about not taking things personally, even though Edie has said it throughout the presentation. I think it's most of all important here, because sometimes I find a lot of youth peer advocates sit in this space of, I just don't know what to do with my supervisor. So I just wanted to share that.
You know, Tiara, Michelle said something very similar in the chat, which is there's also learning the ability to be slapped down and not letting it be a deterrent to yourself, remaining calm and measured and resolute, which is, you know, very much like what you're saying as well. Yeah.
It's funny. I was about to read the same thing. Yeah. And Nivea agrees. It's true. It's really hard to do. And And the other thing is that sometimes, you know, I once worked for someone who just touched all the buttons that my mom used to touch, and it was very difficult for me not to take it personally. And it just was. And I tried really hard and eventually moved on. It's just, well, after 6 years, not immediately, but it was, you know, it's very difficult to do that. But I think that that there's Michelle's making me laugh. She says there's also brown nosing. Just kidding. Yes, we don't want to kiss up to anybody, but it is very difficult to do these kinds of things, and we know it. So let's talk a little bit. We've talked about this throughout as well, and then we're going to break up into some groups here. We want to also encourage your supervisees to do the same with you. And so we've talked about this, and they're not going to be able to if you don't share power and encourage mutuality. That really is, again, I could say that over and over. It's the most important thing to take out of all of the series that we've talked about, is that supervision is about two experts in the room, whether it's you and your supervisee or you and your supervisor, and that sharing power and encouraging mutuality is what sets the stage for respect and relationship. So now we're going to break into some groups. Robbie, Tiara, and Nivea are going to meet with you guys just for 10 minutes, and we're going to look at 3 scenarios. And you're going to be in a group. They'll tell you the scenarios. So I think we'll go over the scenarios when the groups are over. So when we get into the groups, your group leaders will read you the scenarios. So Vanessa, I think we can break into groups just so we're a little bit smaller and you guys can unmute and talk. All right, so everybody now is a managing up expert, right? So, yeah, like we all struggle with this all the time. There's no doubt about it. So let's hear from the group. So the first scenario, I'm going to read it for you guys that weren't in the group. It's on the screen. So your supervisor can be very bossy. She doesn't always explain why she wants something and always seems hurried or stressed. Her orders and expectations seem unreasonable to you. What's the best way to get her attention, and what are some ways to get her to stop and really listen? And how would you manage up with someone like that?
All right, so we had a lot of really great responses, and I'm going to try to encapsulate them as best as I possibly can. But the first response that we got was request a supervision and have a face-to-face conversation. We don't know what's happening necessarily, so we need to have a genuine interaction. Then we have think about what they want and pitch it to them in a way that, you know, this is what I'm hearing you say, and this is what I need kind of manner. Then we have, you know, preface that you don't understand what they need and ask for clarification. Then we have validate their perspective before sharing our needs. I really think that's a great approach to this, because it's kind of, I can't use that term. That's bypass that.
Robbie.
All right, and then we have email first for proof. Before, oh wait, I can't read my own chicken scratch handwriting. Email first for proof or backup, and then follow up in person for that personal touch and genuine conversation. Respond back to how they want to follow up, or what they want us to do, and follow up with what you are planning or what we are planning on doing, and what is reasonable for us from our perspective. So we want to clarify and document what it is that we intend to do, so that we are sure that it was communicated and documented in case that we need to reiterate or defend ourselves.
Love that. Love that. That's great. Thank you. I'm going to do all 3 of them. Then if we have any time at the end, we can sit and talk about these answers. This is great. Okay. So the second scenario was you've been tasked with increasing productivity expectations, but when you actually tried to implement it, it just really is not physically possible. There's not enough staff hours to meet this new expectation. So how might you begin to address this? and with both your supervisor and supervisee, and how can you prove to your supervisor that it's just not physically possible to do what they're asking?
So that was Tiara's group. That was my group. It was an awesome group, very engaging. And we all pretty much on the same page. And I'm going to answer both of the questions in my statement. One thing I'm going to say is my team didn't think anything was not possible, right? Like they were very much, you can just tell the resilience that the leaders in the group have. And a lot of the conversation was around sitting down with your team and figuring out pretty much like, how are we going to tackle this? Figuring out who has what strength and delegating accordingly, being able to have a conversation with our supervisor. But before we have that conversation, having concrete proof of this is the outreach we've tried. These are the methods we've already tried. And putting it like in an Excel spreadsheet or putting it on a piece of paper, and then comparing it to what's being asked of the team to show the supervisor, like this may not be physically possible, but these are the things that we need in order to accomplish this task. So maybe we need to borrow someone from another department. Maybe we need to increase how many hours people are working in a day. Maybe we need to then also sit down and look at the other responsibilities we have on our to-do list and prioritize, right? So figuring out from our supervisor and getting a sense of like, how important is this really, right? Like, is this something that has a quick turnaround time, or is this something that we can delay a little bit longer? But one thing I would say about group 2 was, it was all about how are we going to measure the progress and how much can we complete before we say we cannot do it. So that was something that was very, very positive and unique to group 2.
I love it. That's great. Excellent. Thank you. And group 3, a policy has been handed down and you're tasked with implementing it, even though you don't agree with it. So let's break this down and see if there's any way we can make it work. How can you let your supervisor know you don't agree? What's the best way to communicate the policy to staff? And is there any way to help your staff own it?
I think this was a great question, because everybody know I love policy. But so in addition to all the amazing things that everyone else say, I think my group really tackled knowing that usually policy comes from an organizational perspective. So you really have to look at it in a holistic way. So although you may not agree with it personally, who else could this policy affect? Does it advance other people? Who is the policy geared to? And I think many of the people in my group expressed that one-on-one conversation with their supervisor, even after gaining feedback from different meetings from other individuals about how they feel about it to really build the case, was amazing. Most people in my group expressed that they have a great relationship with the supervisor, so that one-on-one conversation will be kind of easy, and really just educating yourself and to gain a holistic perspective of the policy and the views that other people are coming from, and just make sure, as Tiara mentioned, is always solution-based. So I think those were the main points that I took away from our group.
Boy, these are really, really terrific answers. I just jotted a few things down, but you've really covered all of them. Making sure that that you're being open, you're being honest, you're asking for what you need, you're making sure you understand expectations, and that last one about the spreadsheet, it's like, if you really can't do something, prove it with real numbers. And again, what all of the groups did that I thought was really terrific was keeping focus on the work and accomplishing the task. I love the positive nature of all of the groups. There was no response in there about attitude or approach or personality. It was really all about, how do I handle this particular situation the best way possible? So I really appreciate, your giving that feedback, it looks to me like this is something you all are going to do great at. And, remember that for maximum success, tune in not only to those you manage, but also to those who manage you. We often don't think about that we can have any impact on upper management, upper level management, and from our supervisors up above them. Some people in large organizations don't even know the CEO, never met them. But the truth is, you can ask. The worst thing that can happen is someone will say no. But you can ask, you can be interested, and in doing that, you will be able to get the brass ring, which is that you will be able to do your job better, help the YPAs who you supervise do a better job, and the YPAs will be able to work with the youth they work with to reach their recovery in the best way, that they can, and get a successful and satisfying life. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. And I guess we have a minute or two for some questions, Anne. We have 3 or 4 minutes for some questions, right?
Yeah. I'll answer the easiest one that's come in so far, which is, will we get the slides? And you'll get an email with a link to the slides, and they'll be posted on the CTAC website also. But other questions, what questions do people have, on managing up or related supervision topics?
There were a lot of comments in the chat, but there wasn't, there weren't questions. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask it, or type it in. I did read them all while you guys were talking. Nothing?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here for this entire series, and also for all of your participation today. I really thought it was extremely valuable, and I also just love hearing multiple perspectives. So thank you very much for being present with us.
Edie, I just stalk you wherever you are. So this year I'm a new supervisor as of January to this program. So I've been following you in other forums, and I thought this was just another of those forums, but I'm glad I came today because it just reminded me of things to keep in mind when working in, but it also helps me in that we're care management. So we're always looking to link our clients. We have adult and children who are served by our program, and I'm thinking with, I see this, I could be wrong, but I see this push for peer support services as a new push recently, there's been an infusion into, having more support services, peer support services. And I could really see how this will help our clients, because we can also consider peer specialists, or I'm not sure what peer youth advocates or other peer specialists can work with our clients to work towards independence and not needing us anymore. So really glad that I came today, but I got to take off to drive to another appointment. But thanks, guys. It was great. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
I'll be looking over my shoulder.
Yeah, I'll be stalking you in the next one, Edie. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think that these kinds of things around supervision and that we've been talking about for the last few months, they're, as I said in the beginning, they're not just for working with youth. They're they're for working with anyone, and but there are special issues with working with YPAs, and that's why I think our team worked well in putting these together, because each of our team members has expertise in another little area, and so by sharing that expertise and sharing that power, we were able then to sort of zero in on the issues that you might be having in this particular supervision. All right.
I would encourage everyone to stay in touch with us at CTAC, and with Tiara and Robbie and Nivea in New York City. As you move forward, we're really all learning about what works in terms of supervision in general, but for youth peer advocates in particular. And what I heard today and throughout this series, and I've heard elsewhere, is oftentimes with the peer services, there's more, I think, thoughtfulness that in some places not, but I'm looking at the places that are getting this right. There's some real thoughtfulness about what that supervisor-supervisee relationship should look like. And I think some of that comes from the thoughtfulness that peers have around what the peer provider and peer relationship should look like, right? So I see a lot of parallel kinds of thinking there, and I think we can really learn a lot. Yeah, stay in touch with us. Robbie Lettieri's putting his email in the chat, and we can help you get connected. If you're starting off in peer services and you haven't been doing it, and that's why you're here, definitely reach out to get connected to support, because we have some ideas that we think might help you get off on the right foot.
I do want to mention something. I'm sorry before.
No, go ahead.
I want to mention that supervisors should keep in mind that the YPA role is not necessarily high school diploma based, like entry, level. A lot of like description jobs for YPAs, or just that the field is high school diploma. And sometimes when it comes down to not having the high school diploma, that means also not having like real background job ethics and stuff. So just be more kind, I would say, like not kind, but guidance. Be the mentor. Like you're going to this role that you could really be malleable. What is it? Malleable. Help someone be someone, if that makes sense. My Spanglish is,
No, I love that. I love that. Help someone be someone. That's so perfect. Yeah.
Definitely. I have to say, Angela, that that's very true for YPAs, but it's also true for anyone who comes to supervision, even people who are fully cooked already. It's your opportunity to really help someone to find their best qualities in themselves and to bring out those best qualities. And it's a joyous job to supervise people and to mentor them, because it's a chance to really help somebody shine.
You'll notice that in the chat, there's a link that Vanessa has posted in the chat. I would ask everyone to click on that link and complete a really brief survey. It gives us some feedback on this webinar, and it's also an opportunity for you to tell us what other topics you would like us to cover in the future. So if we could get everyone to click on that link and respond to the survey, that would be really wonderful. I'm going to just show you that there's a few resource slides. I'm not going to go through these, but when you get the slides, you'll see that there are links to other resources, both from Families Together Youth Power and from CTAC. There's also some hiring toolkits that are on the CTAC Self-Learning Center. Actually, this says the FPA hiring toolkit. That we'll have to correct that, but there's a youth and a family peer advocate hiring toolkit. And I want to thank all of our presenters. Everyone has just brought some really wonderful wisdom and experience and perspective, and generously shared that today. And as Robbie said, all of you who came and really made this conversation rich. So thank you for spending an hour and a half with us today. You will be getting an email shortly with an invitation to an office hours webinar that we're going to hold on December 14th. Anyone that's attended any of the webinars in this series is going to get that invitation, but we're not broadcasting it more widely. So if that sounds interesting to you, it's really an opportunity for you to come and ask a question that you have, or listen to other questions that other people are posing and share your ideas. It's just an opportunity for a little bit more discussion. So you can, sorry, I'm losing my voice. So you can look forward to getting that email in the next week or so, and that will be held on December 14th. So with that, I'm going to close us out, unless any of the panelists have anything else they would like to say.
No, just thank you so much, everyone.
I just wanted to echo what Nivea just said. Just thanks to everyone for adding so much and making this so rich. Thank you.